right, hello there friends, and welcome to our final week of Invisible to Visible. I just wanted to take a little bit of time here, and I'll try to make this as concise as possible, just to talk about the culminating project for Invisible to Visible. So I'm just going to scroll down. As you can see here, I'm just on Schoology. I'm on the course outline. And so I'm just going to scroll down to week 5. And week 5 is all about coming up with some sort of a plan for how you plan to work to make your space, whether that's a classroom, an office, a library, but how you plan to make that space more equitable and or inclusive for LGBT plus students. So as you see here on week 5, there are several different links, and the first thing you might want to do is simply click on each link and kind of check it out. As you can see here, I'm just going to click on this first link. It says curating resources and setting SMARTY goals for the research portfolio. And I just want to remind you, your research portfolio is literally the Google folder that you created and shared with me. So you're just going to make sure that these documents are inside of that folder. And then when the class ends on July 2nd, I'll go in and I will grade these and get these entered as quickly as possible for you. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Research Portfolio here. Okay, and as you can see here, it just brings up this document, which is the scoring guide for the research portfolio. It just says the research portfolio is considered a culminating experience for this course with the intent that the participant can take this information back to the classroom, office, and workspace to increase equity and inclusivity for our LGBTQ plus students. And so here are the things that we're looking for. Okay, we're looking at the materials presented in an organized fashion. Like I said, you're just going to put that inside of your Google folder for me. You're able to answer the questions with depth and thoughtful reflection, and those questions, I'll show you those here in just a second. That the participant articulates and demonstrates respect for issues of diversity, equity, culture, and inclusion. And then you're going to have down here, as it says, 5 classroom-friendly resources are included. Now, obviously, if you're a counselor, that's going to be, you know, for your office, right? Your counseling officer. If you're a librarian, that's going to be 5 library-friendly resources included in your portfolio. Okay, so that is it for that document. Now here, I'm going to click next where it says Read SMARTY Assignment, and then there's a sample. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. Okay, curating resources and setting SMARTY goals. All right, and so I'm just going to kind of scroll down. Okay, I'm going to change a little bit of stuff on our background here because I did change this just a little bit. But obviously throughout this course we have studied 2 texts. We have read the Educator's Guide to LGBT plus Inclusion, and we have read Dr. Ayrton's, 3 chapters from Dr. Ayrton's Gender-Friendly Primer. So our guiding question here in yellow is, what can I do to increase LGBTQ plus equity and inclusivity in my classroom or in my space? And what steps am I going to follow to meet that goal? All right, so I want you to think about what is going to be your goal, again, for increasing equity and inclusivity. And friends, I just want to emphasize, it can be as small a goal as you would like, or it can be as large of a goal as you would like. And I'm going to talk you through some samples coming up. Okay, so step 1 says preview the SMARTY goals information and sample here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on this document. And I'm sure those of you that have been around as long as I have, you probably remember creating SMART goals. And so you'll notice that this is going to be exactly the same as what we've talked about as far as SMART goals. But now we have included an I and an E at the end for inclusive and equitable. Right, so the SMART goals, the S is for strategic, the M is for measurable, A is for ambitious, which is different for each participant. I do want to acknowledge that. It has to be realistic. Okay, we're not going to try to go out and you know, get the school district to, you know, I don't know, change every single policy overnight, right? Just not realistic. But we are going to have time-bound goals. So giving yourself a deadline of when you want to have done the action that you plan to do. And then obviously we're going to make sure it's inclusive and equitable. And when we're focused on increasing equity for LGBT plus students, obviously it's going to be inclusive and equitable. okay? And so here are the questions that I mentioned earlier. So you're going to be making a copy of this document, and that's coming up here in just a second, and you're just going to fill out this information. So my goals between, and you're going to put a start date and an end date, the outcome that you would like, how will I know success when I see it, the main activities or tactics I'll use to make it realistic, and then, and obviously you're just going to keep going through this, strategic, ambitious, and the outcome you'd like to see, again making it measurable, activities you need to do, and then there are questions at the end. Can you imagine there being any unintentional disparate impact along lines of race, gender, class, ability, access, or power, and how might you change the goals to either mitigate that impact or to make equity and inclusion an intentional feature? Okay, and then here's my sample. Okay, I'm going to talk about, and this is a sample that I did last year, so I just want to talk you through it because I think just seeing an example helps a lot. So what I did at the top here is you'll see for time bound, I put my goals. I want it to happen between August and December. August would be the start date for school. December used to be the end of first semester. Now first semester carries over into January, but I think so. I think this is maybe 2 years ago. I don't know, I'll have to look as we're going through this here, but so here was my goal, okay, and this is a goal for me, and some of you may be to this point, some of you may not be, but my goal was to lead teacher professional development in my building, focused on increasing equity and inclusivity for our LGBTQ plus students, and then my hope, obviously, the outcome that I was hoping for is that the PD will lead to an increase in equity and inclusivity for our LGBT plus students in the classroom. Right? And so then I had to come down, I'm like, well, how am I going to know, right, the impact? How am I going to know success when I see it? And so, though I can't necessarily measure impact amongst students, I had to figure out a way that I could measure impact. And so for me, I put the success will be measured by the number of teachers participating in my professional development, and then from the surveys that they completed at the end of the PD. All right, I move myself out of the way so I can scroll down. And then as you come down here, the main activities or tactics I'll use to make it realistic. So then I gave myself dates. By 11/15, I wanted to make sure that I was again offering this particular graduate course, and this should be a 15 here as well. By 11/15, offering Fast and Furious PD sessions for Lee Summit West teachers. Which I did, and then I got the surveys from that so that I could help measure the impact, and then by December 31st, just my ongoing Twitter professional development that I do on my own, tweeting research, resources, videos, people that follow me. I try to give lots of information specific to the LGBT plus community for those people that would rather read, the 40 characters or tweets or watch a video as opposed to, take a course or sit through one of my PD sessions, okay? So then I just came down and I answered these questions at the bottom. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but can you imagine there being unintentional disparate impact? Unfortunately, my answer had to be yes. Almost all of our teachers at Lee Summit West are white, and so obviously I thought that that might impact how our teachers interact with issues of race. Also as far as social economic status. Our students sometimes, I don't know, I just think, yes, there could definitely be some impact there, especially along race, because the majority of our teachers are white, and we all know that not every member of the LGBT plus community is white. And so teachers may not feel equipped to handle issues of race. But when we're talking about equity and inclusivity, the things that we've been learning throughout the readings we've been doing and the discussions we've been having, a lot of those things, just making things equitable and inclusive for the LGBT plus community can be translated to other communities as well. And so I hope that that's been somewhat apparent as we've gone through this course. And then how might you change the goals to either mitigate that disparate impact or to make equity and inclusion an intentional feature? I put there that I'm going to work very hard, and I hope I did a better job with this particular grad class here, of talking about race, and talking about intersectionality and how those things play in. And if you can be more equitable, for one group, you can be more equitable and inclusive, for other groups. And so obviously that's the goal there. Now I did want to talk about, because I feel like my goals were big. But I felt like, with my background and the research and things that I've done, I felt like that this was a good plan for me. And so this is an actual plan that I put into action. But I will tell you, though, that I want you to make goals that you feel like are realistic and attainable for you. So if, and for some people, I'm just going to be honest, right? For some people, maybe just putting up that safe place sticker so that students know you're a safe place. For a lot of people, that is a huge first step. And so I don't want to discount that as being too small. If that's something you want to do, or maybe just in general, you want to have more representation in your classroom. So maybe you're going to have a new set of posters and a safe place sticker. Or maybe you're going to work to expand your classroom library. Or if you're in the counseling center, maybe you're going to put a safe place sticker on your door. Maybe you're going to, bring in some, some pamphlets, some research to hand to students when and if they need it. Or maybe you're going to have more conversations, teachers, counselors, librarians, anyone. Maybe you're going to have more conversations with colleagues, right? Maybe those are going to be a little more informal. But maybe you're just going to do more talking and help educate other folks about things you've been learning in that class. I think that's a great goal. I have had a couple of teachers in the past that have been special ed teachers, and so they have taken a special ed focus. One particular project that stands out to me was an autism specialist who took this course, and so she wanted to focus on how to help meet the needs of our autistic LGBT plus kiddos, and it was fantastic. She came up with her own goals that she wanted to do, and she followed through on, and so it was kind of cool. But again, I want you to come up with goals that you feel, are realistic for you. And so nothing is too small or too big, as long as it is realistic for something that you could accomplish, within a reasonable amount of time. And then what you're going to do once you have filled out this sheet is you're just going to make sure that it's in your shared folder so that I can go in and give you a score for that. So I'm going to come back here. And it says curate resources, so feel free to go to the web and find any websites that are specific to your content area, specific to you as a counselor. This book that we read does have some good stuff in it for, social studies was covered, ELA, music. But definitely if you go to the web, you're going to find a lot more resources out there that are specific to your content area, or specific to counselors, specific to librarians. And so I think that will help you quite a bit too. So simply go to the web and get a list of resources. Then I would go in and start making my Smarty goals. Okay, and I've given you a template here. And it says there in parentheses, you're simply going to file, make a copy, place this in your shared folder. And so here's the template. Okay, and again, the sample is linked so that you have that as well. And you're just going to go through and fill out those particular questions. Again, I want to emphasize this part though, right? Go through and curate resources from the web. Maybe you've listened to some podcasts. You can obviously, you can write these down as resources that you have. But I think when you're thinking about goals that are specific to you as an individual, I think it might help to go onto the web and search, LGBT plus lesson plans for history, or LGBT plus equity and inclusivity in the English language arts classroom, or LGBT plus resources for elementary counselors, middle school counselors, high school counselors. And you're going to find tons and tons and tons of stuff, and I think that will give you a lot of ideas of some starting places of what you could do to make your space, okay, whatever your space is, to make that more equitable and inclusive for our LGBT plus kiddos. So again, that's our ultimate goal, is to figure out how we are going to make your space more equitable and inclusive. And that's what you will submit for our final culminating project. Then it will be up to you, friends, from there to implement your project, implement your goals, and then just to touch base with me every now and then and let me know how it's going and if you have any questions. So once again, I want to thank you for taking this class. I love teaching this class. Obviously, it's very personal to me. I love it. And I hope that we can make all of our spaces more equitable and inclusive for all students, so